Hi everyone, welcome back. We're so lucky to have Pierre for another half an hour. And before we begin, Pierre, you were talking about intentions and really, thinking deeply about the message of transmission. So before we go into that, can you pick a minute between 24, for your track 24.42 minutes? Can you tell me a number?
Go to 5 minutes.
Okay, hopefully the internet catches up.
Let's see what's there.
Cool, so we're just listening for the next minute.
When I listen to that, I actually go back into, it sounded like electricity to me. Like somehow it just sounded like energy and was just sparking off all those accents. It was like I would put a certain inflection on twisting the knob in that way, and it just felt like electrified or something. Like I the first time I associated music with energy, it was listening to acid tracks and in the production and creation of it. One thing I can say is that every 303 sounds different, and I honestly believe had I got a whack 303, I don't know, because when I got other ones after that, they couldn't even do that. Like they couldn't be so squelchy. And I was like, hey, this one ain't working right. It's like, what's wrong with this machine? But that one was so squelchy that it was just like, wow, I love that sound. So that's my thoughts when I hear that, though. That's like imagine when you first get something. But the biggest thought I have is that no one ever asks me this question. But I ask myself this question all the time. Why did I think that was something? Because when you think about it, is that music? It's like, what is that? What is that sound? Like in my head. And then I don't get a chance to have the experience that all of you guys had when you first heard it, to be like, what? What is that? So sometimes I want to ask people, like, what did you think? Were you like, why did you even like it? Like, that sounds just so different.
Absolutely. And going into the arrangement a little bit, what was your thought process around actually arranging this track? Because Carl Cox said that it didn't have a beginning, middle, or end, right? It just was, and it is. And so there's no, build up, there's no breakdown here, breakdown there, every 16 bars, 32 different little thing coming in. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that and the way that you manage the energy transmission and the changes through that.
Well, so that one, it was like we actually, the beginning of it, it just starts out with the beat and then it fades up, because in a way it never had a particular pattern that seemed to make sense to just boosh, come straight in. And I think that also, since it sounded so different and unique, it seemed like it has to fade in, because if it comes straight in, it's too much. It might people be like, what is that? So if it's coming up slowly, you can kind of accept it, at least deal with it a little bit better. So that's why we faded it in. But as far as breaks, yeah, there's no breaks in this track. I mean, we have like 3 different patterns that kind of switches up the monotony to go back and forth. But and that's why you had the part where it tweaks really high and then it goes down low and then it comes back into the other pattern, just to give you a break from the other pattern. But yeah, that track just goes. It's just the twisting of the knobs, and it's one of those things where it's like a loop that you get caught up in. And I think your mind just could go all over the place. Like you just start thinking of, oh, I'm in space and I'm floating around in the stars. Like next day you don't even know where you at anymore. So it's kind of like can take you off, let your mind drift into la la land or whatever.
Talking about where our minds can go, let's talk about where it went on the dance floor, because it's really interesting to look back and think, it took Ron 4 plays of that track on the same night before the dance floor actually responded positively to acid tracks. There's now actually a Wikipedia page dedicated to this record. The first time that he played the track, it cleared the dance floor, but by the fourth time he played it, people were dancing upside down at 4 a.m. So, and you were there. So how did you feel seeing the dance floor react in so many different ways and in real time to this sound?
It's funny because he brought that track into this song called, it goes, I Want to Be With You When a Disco Night Is Over. So I don't remember what the name of that song is. I just know how the song goes. And so this is like a disco type track. And then full instrumentations, horns, strings, bass guitar, all that vibe. And then this is where I got the idea of taking the bass out and bringing a track in. Is because he dropped the bass in the one track, and then he had acid tracks coming in. And you just hear ding ding. You just hear the bells coming, and so you're like, okay. And then so I mean, of course, we knew what song it was, but for him to mix that into a disco record, you couldn't think of two other more contrasting songs and sounds. So, but when I think about it, though, this didn't happen at that time. I think about Donna Summer, I Feel Love. And I think about how that bass line went on there. I think, oh, wow. That's like, it has a vibe. It makes me think of acid now that acid exists, even though it wasn't no tweaking, but it had a pattern that was fast. So it kind of could work. But so when he's bringing it in, and then when it's fading up, it just was a transition. But Ron Hardy was the master of mixing two totally crazy things together. And I think it worked inside the music box because we all were always ready for him to come from left field with something. So by this time, since it was played a few times before then, when it was coming in and it finally came in all the way, the acid line faded up and came in, people were just like going crazy. And the thing is, you dance one way to disco. When this comes in, people didn't know how to move. So they were just like
on the ceiling.
Like they were doing stuff and they didn't know what to do. And it made me realize how music truly makes you move different ways with different beats. You know, you like, so to that track, it made you want to jump up and down and get rambunctious, you know. So we would start like crashing into each other. I'll flow this way. The whole place started slam dancing and people were doing stupid stuff, but everybody felt free to do whatever they wanted to do. So, I mean, it was quite an experience, one that I had never had previous to that. And I can understand how acid sound became like the backdrop to like a youth movement, because it needed a little more, it needed some kind of strong energy that made you get real excited and want to yell and scream and fight against the power. So I think acid house was a great music to usher in the youth movement.
Were you aware of the controversy that then surrounded the acid house movement in the UK afterwards?
Later on, I was, and when I found out about it, that made me proud of acid, because I thought, wow. And I realized that this was, to rave and to party, it was something that was fought for. And coming from a country that we have to fight for civil rights and stuff, I connected to that very strongly. I was like, wow, they had to fight to be able to do this. They had teams, investigative reporting teams, reporting on the illegal raves and this and that. They said that this music cannot be played. So that right there is a government trying to shut down the youth in music and try to say, no, you're not going to do this. And we're going to keep you from doing it. And they fought up. They raised up against that. And I think that's important to be spoken about a lot more, because right now we're enjoying certain rights that we didn't have before. And I think anybody younger, if that was more in the front of this music, I think they would respect the whole music a lot more and say, hey, we fought for this. You know, y'all tried to stop it, and we kept going. People sacrificed time in jail and stuff like that just to be able to play this music and do it. I couldn't even come to Europe at the time. Like, and when I was trying to come, they said, do not say who you are. They had me in the room for 5 hours when I first got to England. And I'm like, no, I'm just coming to visit my friend, and, you know, whatever. And it's like, do not. And it's good that my name, Nathaniel, isn't part of my name on the record. So I was able to get in. But, yeah, they said if they find out, Pierre, if they find out. And I didn't even know how serious it was. But when I found out, I was like, wow, it's crazy.
What's been the most unexpected or surprising thing about the success of this record for you?
I think how people received it is probably the most inspiring thing, because, to be honest, like I was mentioning earlier, I mean, when we created it, we just thought anything that sounded different was a possibility at being something. But now, being older, I'm thinking, yo, that sounded crazy. Like, that track, I don't know how people even received it like that. Like, so I'm like thinking like, wow, that was crazy how that could be something, because there's no reference previous to that to relate it to, but people got into it. So I feel very blessed because of that.
Did you ever feel pressure, either as your own artist or with Spanky and Herb J, to follow up with an equally groundbreaking record? Because that must have come as a huge shock.
You know what? The first time I felt pressure was when Spanky came home. Not come home, but he came over, and he was all huffing and puffing, like he was having a panic attack. He was like, Pierre, I just heard everybody saying how acid is over and it's through, and everybody talking about Future's done and this and that, and he's like, man, he said it's done. I said, what are you talking about? He said he read in a magazine and people are saying stuff like that. I was like, it's not done. So I get defiant because I'm just like that. I'm like, nope, we're going to prove him wrong. And so I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to write a song. I'm going to write a song tonight. And so I made an acid pattern. I wrote We Are Future. And, you know, and Future Will Survive. And I wrote that song that night. And it says, I don't even remember the lyrics anymore. It said Future, yeah. I don't remember. Oh, I see space fading down on us. The future is growing near. Rocket ships and laser guns. Acid music, can you hear? And some other junk. But I was saying at the end, Future will survive. Future will stay alive. That in the future, you can't surpass the future because it's always one step ahead of you. So I make that song, and that song ends up being like the biggest Future track. So I just think that the group Future has always challenged me to put out certain messages, and then following that was the Wild Pitch sound. So it was challenging, but to me, a challenge is motivation. When I'm challenged, I always think I could find a way to get through that challenge. And it's like trying to put together a puzzle, because you know the answer is there. You just have to find it. I'm someone that always thinks that I can solve any puzzle or any riddle given time. And everything I haven't figured out, I always say, yet. I ain't figured it out yet. I never give in to being defeated. So I'll say, not yet. So, and I always tell people this. I say, yeah, you might not know the answer now, but, you will. And so I take on all challenges like that if it's something I truly believe in.
Of course, after this incredible genre broke through, so many other producers started experimenting and layering acid elements into their tracks. How did you feel hearing other producers' interpretation of acid?
In the beginning, I was terrified. Like when I first heard 151 by Armando, and it was so good. But when I heard it, I was like, because first I used to hear tracks that I was like, nope, that's not acid. It'll be some other keyboard. Because if you used another keyboard and was trying to make the acid sound, I didn't say that was acid. I said, that ain't acid. And then I felt good. But time I heard someone with that was it. I was like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. But after a while, it became a good thing because it meant that it was growing and turning into its own sound outside of us. But we were the ones that started it. So it became good. I felt good about it later on. And then it's always good to see what someone else does with something you put out there. And then you get re-inspired by something they're doing. Like I remember Hard Floor when they had all the different like 3/4 303s in one track. I was like, wow. I said, they just made that like an orchestra. And I was like, I'm going to do that too. So it was good to be able to get some inspiration in regards to the acid sound, So I loved it.
So many decades under your belt as a producer, seeing all the, major shifts in technology and everything else. How has your approach evolved when making music? What's in your mind? How do you approach it?
Since it's new technology, my approach is a little bit different. I always like to find my message. Every song has a foundational message, whether it is a verbal message or a message just simply through an instrumental piece. I just center myself before I start, or I can't wait to get to the studio because I've already got it rolling around in my head. But for me, my music has to be something of an inspiration and inspire someone in some type of way. It can't be something that's going to bring death to them or destruction. It has to be something that they can apply and use as a source of motivation or energy or get some comfort from, love or whatever. So that right there is very important to me. And I also started changing the hertz from 440 to 432 because that's the more natural wave of the universe. And I think that the 440 is disruptive. And you can see it in the patterns that it creates within water or within crystals. And so I feel like if you're listening to a lot of this, it could be disrupting your own molecular structure in some type of way. So I try to just be in tune with everything that's around us,
Do you think that music today is actually fostering the community of producers together, or do you think that it's adding a lot more competition between each other?
That's interesting because the competition for me, I think, has always been there. I don't know if the music is adding competition. I think maybe social media may be more disruptive in that way. But I think the competition has always been there. But the problem is that we had competition always, but we were always a community, meaning that we met up in the record shops and we would see each other and we would talk about what we're doing, where we're going. You could see the flyers. You hang out with promoters, DJs, singers, producers, and you're talking amongst each other. And I think technology, since it's no more about going to a single place to get your music, we don't see each other much. And we're not there talking about the scene, what we want to do, what we should do. So I think it's more of a disconnection that makes it seem like there's more of a competition. But I think we had competition, but we also had camaraderie as well. Like, we were supporters of each other. And I think it's hard to see the support today because you haven't even spoken to the person. I've seen them in so long. And I think we need more collaborative efforts happening. So I wish that we can get back to the more community aspect in terms of face-to-face meeting. I think that's why places like this are so important now, because you're able to bump into each other, even if it's for a small time. But I think community is very important, because any culture that loses its community, you can see the downfall of that culture and disconnect, and you can see it just in the world in general, how communities have been broken down, and you can see how the disconnect and how easy it is for them to attack one another or not understand or not empathize with each other. I guess the same thing happens in music to some degree.
For sure, and that's exactly why we wanted to host the session in this brave space, because as part of He, She, They, the session is also hosted by Point Blank, and there's a lot of up-and-coming talent, who'll be watching this interview. And my final question for you would be, what would you say to those up-and-coming producers? What would you say if you could look back and talk to a young DJ Pierre who's just starting out as an artist? What would you say to the producers of tomorrow?
I would tell them, see this music as your music. We felt like the music was ours. We created it as ours, so we owned it. Don't look at it as you're getting into being a part of a community that you're just a visitor in. You have to own this thing and say, this is our thing. And when you take ownership of something, you take care of it. You be responsible. And I think people need to not see it as something that they're just a part of. And from the outside looking in, they need to take it on as, okay, I'm a part owner in this. And we have to protect our thing, protect the sanctity, the culture, the art form within it. And we have to sacrifice for the greater good of this community, of this culture, of this art form, and push back against all who would try to destroy it or devalue it or degrade it. We have to not accept, oh, well, that's just how it is, or this is how it's going, and all this kind of talk. No, we're not going to allow that. And that's the part that really needs the community mindset, because if we're a community, then we're going to be on the same page and we're in communication. And that's why it's easier for things to go left or go down, because there's lack of community. That's why Spotify could not pay us. Don't pay us for the streams barely, and things like that can happen because we don't have a community mindset to be like, no, this is not right, and we cannot even make a living off of this, and it's just totally wrong. So, but yeah, I just think taking ownership, being proud of this thing, because everybody isn't doing this. So most people aren't free and don't have full autonomy of how they make their money. They're listening to someone else. They got to get up every morning at 9 to 5 and do all that. Sometimes that makes you old. If you look at some people, they could be the same age as you, but since they work that every day 9 to 5, you be thinking, dude, ain't we the same age? Well, how come it seems like you like my uncle or something, like you're older than me? But this music keeps you young, and it keeps you free. This is freedom. And I think that if we don't be careful, it will be taken from us. It won't be ours anymore, or we won't even be involved in it. With AI will be making all the music, and we'll be sitting there on the sidelines. So, I mean, people always, oh, that's great. Oh, this guy just told the AI to do this and do that, and it whipped out a track. I'm thinking, how are you saying that's great when that's going to be your job that thing is taking? And then we'll be sitting around trying to figure out how we can make music that sounds like the AI made it. So we won't even be emulating ourselves anymore. We'll be following that. So I'm telling you, I got kids, and they listen to all that stuff. And I'm like, I be mad. I'm like, why are you listening to that? That ain't a real person right there. So, but once you get the kids, ooh, Phuture is doomed. So I'm like trying to I'm staunchly against that in all forms. Even my other daughter, I have a daughter 30, she's an artist. She draws like anime and such things, and she's really popular in that. And she's so against like the AI stuff, because this is us. We're human, right? Technology is great and amazing, but there's a tipping point. And sometimes when you see that tipping point coming, don't just sit there and cheer it on because you're proud of what we as men and women have created. Sometimes you can say, okay, everything don't have to be out there like that. It needs to be kept in check. And it should be gatekeepers on it so it doesn't destroy art. And once you lose your art and creativity, you lose your identity as a people. It's like, what are we going to be left with after that?
Exactly, and true fulfillment really comes from the journey of creation, not just trying to fast track things because the pressure is there,
Right.
and also the ethics of what the community stands for and how AI may not meet some of those ethics in a way. Really powerful words to end on. Thank you so much, DJ Pierre. It's an honor to have you here at IMS and with Point Blank. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys.